Hey, welcome to our bonus panel. If you joined us this Sunday, this is just a little extra. We can get into the weeds of some of the topics that we were talking about. Joining us, Devin Barrington Ward, the founder of the Black Futurist Group, Deanna Harris, a Republican strategist, as well as Chauncey Alcorn, joining us for the first time from Capitol B, Atlanta. Thank you all so much. So, Deanna, I do want to pick up on the conversation. We were talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene not running for governor, and you had mentioned that right now her seat is secure. She can say whatever she wants to do. The people in her district are going to stick beside her, as they say in the media, right? My question, though, is I feel like her personality, she has a lot of voice. She's not really worried about what other people think about her, even if she's not running, or even if she was running, rather. You would hear her say what she's going to say anyway.
Well, that is true, but then you also have to remember that if she was running for a higher office or a different office, she would have strategists that would be, and consultants that would say, hey, maybe not, let's do this, right? With her being in the 14th, of course she can say things that and most of the things previously that she said was on her mind were very conservative points of views. So it went with the voters' base. So that may be true, but she, again, like I said, she doesn't have any consultants telling her what to do.
I mean, I think
Donald Trump had consultants too, but he still
does
what
he wants. But I do think that particularly on this issue of the conflict in Israel and calling it a genocide, I think that there was a time where anti-war sentiments were seen as more of progressive viewpoints. But when you look at the way that some progressives have voted, Democrats have voted on this issue to double down in some ways, it has kind of changed the tenor of where that particular base will fall as it pertains to being anti-war, or at least pulling back on a level of support that the United States is giving for Israel. And she not only called it a genocide, but said that it was a humanitarian crisis. She's used language that even Democrats in Congress, some Democrats in Congress, have not. Now, I will give credit to Senator Ossoff and Senator Warnock. They did vote with Senator Sanders on his legislation to discontinue the armament of Israel. But I think part of the reason they had to do that was because there was no way, and they were going to have any credibility with their base of support if they voted for that. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying we shouldn't be sending more money and weapons over to Israel.
Chauncey, I want to bring you in here. You mentioned back on the Georgia vote earlier, you said that John Ossoff, Senator Ossoff, had in some ways kind of been goading Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene to get into this race. We've seen other candidates and other prominent Democrats sort of follow that track and use the specter of a potential either Senate or gubernatorial run by Congresswoman Greene as a fundraising vehicle, as something to inspire their base and get people excited and kind of run against. Now that it's clear that Congresswoman Greene is not running for governor, she said earlier she's not running for Senate, does that in some ways take away that option for these Democratic candidates to kind of say, look at the alternative here?
Well, in some ways, I think Representative Collins still has that, that brand of MAGA that Marjorie Taylor Greene has. And I think that the president, whether he turns it around, the economy over the course of the next year, 2026 is a long way away. So there's a lot that can happen. But what happens in these races, I think, is going to be largely dependent upon what happens with the president, with the economy, with the Epstein files, and as that scandal continues to unravel, and how folks are impacted by the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. I know that that's been a big concern. A lot of the federal programs that have been cut, how that's going to impact people's bottom lines and their homes next year when the bill takes effect. So I think that's going to have as much of an impact as who he's running against.
That timing is going to be so important, Devin.
Yeah, I just think that the other piece about Donald Trump is when you look at when he's on the ballot, Republicans do better. When he's not on the ballot, Republicans don't do that good. Particularly given that if we're following typical presidential trends, typically the president will lose their majority in one or both chambers of Congress. And that's
in the midterms.
And that is something that happens for presidents that have poll numbers that are not even as low as Donald Trump's poll numbers in some places in key battleground states like Georgia. And so I think Republicans have some concern, legitimate concern, about whether or not this is going to be a sweep for them across the country and including here in Georgia.
Well,
Are you
we have
concerned?
to remember that most places don't have the ground game that Governor Kemp has. And
But they're fighting right now.
well, I don't know about that. You know, when it comes to these, elections and voters and getting out the vote, Kemp owns it, and we can't deny that. You know, he swept the floor with the Democrats on both of his wins.
But
and
he's
so,
also
and that,
not on the ballot.
I understand that, but it doesn't mean that he's still not activating that for the individuals that are. And I'm sure that he will do that for each one that he's behind. Probably even the whole entire Republican ballot.
Let's Devin, I know you're itching to get in here, and Chauncey, I know you are too. Let's kind of get on firm footing on this, because this is a topic worth unpacking here for a minute. This is a story that if you follow Georgia politics, you have heard before. Some maybe tension between the governor, who's a Republican, and the president, who is a Republican. At times they have really been in lockstep. At other times there has been some distance between how they view the state of politics. We know from our reporting that Governor Brian Kemp has told Senate hopefuls that he is throwing his support behind Derek Dooley, who's really doesn't have much of a political record. He's been a football coach.
Yeah, but his mother ran on the Republican ballot twice.
Where I'm
So
going, and his dad, very famous Vince Dooley, legendary Georgia football coach. Derek Dooley, I think it's safe to say, does not have the MAGA branding that a candidate like Congressman Mike Collins has. Could this be setting up a situation where Governor Kemp is putting his support behind Derek Dooley in this contest, and President Donald Trump is looking at either Congressman Mike Collins or Congressman Buddy Carter, who's also branded himself as a MAGA warrior, and you get a little bit of tension between Kemp and Trump. I know you want to go, Devin. Deanna, you go first.
Well, I couldn't answer that question, honestly, but I think the best thing for President Trump would be is allow Georgia to do Georgia, right?
Stay out of the primary process.
Stay out of the primary process, right? And if he wants to do something, maybe, have some funds that he can put behind us in the general election.
Wait for that nominee to
Of course.
clinch it and then step in.
Correct.
Devin,
He's not going to do that.
I was going to ask you if you think he's going to do it. You made it clear.
He's not going to do that. And I think that, in this instance, I'm not in any position to advise Republicans, but I would say that I think Deanna's right. Brian Kemp probably has the pulse on what's going on in Georgia better than Donald Trump does. But is Donald Trump going to listen? No. We know that this is a very ego-driven president, and he wants people who are going to be loyal to him no matter what. And I don't know if Coach Dooley passes the loyalty test in the same ways that some of the other MAGA Republicans who are in the race do. And what we have found is that when MAGA Republicans win primaries, not just here in Georgia, but in other places, they tend to not do well in the general because they're not electable to independents who largely decide who are going to be elected to these very important positions.
We're making this too much about Trump. Right. This is about the voters. And one thing that I know happens is that famous football names kind of have a heavy weight when it comes to that
speaking
ballot.
of
The
that,
last football
Chauncey, do
player
you
that we
want to
had,
talk
he
about
lost.
another famous football player?
The last football player we had lost, right.
But my question to you, and Deanna, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you were literally in my brain as I was about to deliver this to Chauncey. Are we going to see that again? Potentially.
It's ironic because it's kind of flipped this time. Herschel Walker was the candidate that Trump endorsed, obviously big University of Georgia football legend. And Mr. Dooley, former coach at Tennessee, son of a famous Georgia coach, is now getting support from Governor Kemp. The way it played out last time, obviously Herschel Walker did not fare very well. And now we got U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock. It'll be interesting. I think that a lot of those dynamics are playing out again, where you have the quote-unquote MAGA lane that can help you in the primary, but perhaps depending upon how the economy goes and some of these other things shake out, a lot of folks, independents, may not be as jazzed about what's going on right now nationally and with foreign policy as perhaps some of the Trump folks who are also divided on the Epstein scandal, on the bombing of Iran. You saw a lot of right-wing influencers, Charlie Kirk, Steve Bannon and others, Candace Owens, who kind of sounded off and parted ways with Trump on some of those issues. So it'll be interesting to see how the candidates here in Georgia look at that and examine, do they run away from MAGA or do they run with it? It'll be a much more challenging thing to do in the primary than in the
And you
general.
have to focus on the voter. Like, Deanna, you do make a valid point that it's going to be up to the voter,
Yeah.
depending on, who they're going
Dooley
to vote
doesn't
for.
have that negative Walker baggage, right? So it's a huge
He
difference.
has a clean slate.
He has a
pretty
clean.
much
He has a clean
create
slate. What he
his
does
own
not
narrative.
have is the support of Donald Trump, who is the leader of the Republican
We know
Party.
so far. I mean, look, we're prognosticating here, right?
Yeah.
You don't know
Yeah.
how this is going to
And he's not
shake
in the
out, but
race
you're
yet.
right. So there's kind of a lot of things that have got to happen here first. We've got about a minute and a half left here. We spent a lot of time talking about Republicans, Republican politics. Deanna, you were kind of in the hot seat today, and that's that's how these things go sometimes. But Devin,
Still cool, calm, and
for
collected.
Democrats, there is an active and contested Democratic primary in the gubernatorial. We've got State Senator Jason Estevez. He's in the race. Former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, former DeKalb County CEO Michael Thurmond has very strongly indicated he plans to get in. He said as much in a speech in Albany, but he said it's not a official announcement.
Yeah.
But it looks like he's likely to get in.
Yeah.
Are we going to see a similar dynamic play out on the Democratic side of this, where you've got a contested election and you're going to see these candidates break for one pole or the other of their party?
I don't think so, as much as things are not as polarized on the Democratic side. I think what Democrats are looking for are for people who are willing to fight and stand up against the president's agenda that they don't feel is working for working class people. The problem is that for folks, getting the primary matters less. The general is what folks really have to focus on and really indicate to people that I can win in the general. That's what Democrats are going to be
Devin,
looking for.
You said there's no polarization, but I mean, I felt like in 2024, you saw several parts of the Democratic Party that seemed to be fighting against each other.
Well, I don't necessarily think that there are candidates in the Democratic field that really represent different factions of the Democratic Party. Most of them are middle of the road, moderate Democrats. There is no progressive that has jumped in the race. There's no ultra-conservative Democrat that has jumped in the race. So the polarization amongst the candidates, for the most part, they are kind of the same on paper as far as the policies and the things that they support. So the case that they'll have to make is who's going to be the strong enough Democrat to be able to face the Republicans in the general.
We're running low on time here. Deanna, I'm getting the sense you probably disagree with that assessment a little bit.
A little bit.
Okay.
I mean, I like Jason Estevez, Senator Estevez. He's a very strong candidate, but I just don't know if any of them have the funds. And then I've also heard that Stacey's still considering a comeback.
Stacey Abrams, you're
Yeah.
talking about there. Maybe just because we're running low on time here. Last word to you, Chonsa. You cover Georgia politics. Stacey Abrams has run for governor twice, unsuccessfully, twice. Is she going to get in for a third run?
Ooh, that's $1 million question. The short answer is I don't know. I know that there's a lot of folks who think that she's lost twice and perhaps she doesn't have the juice to do it a third time. I should also mention Representative Derek Jackson has jumped into the race as well. He kind of has charted, and I interviewed him earlier, as a kind of a more progressive path than some of the other candidates perhaps. But I think right now, if the front runners are former Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms and Jason Estevez, who've been racking up endorsements.
On that note, guys, as always, thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it so much. We appreciate you for watching us.